1 Samuel chapter 15. And Samuel says to Saul, Yahweh sent me to anoint you for king over his people, over Israel. And now listen to the voice of the words of Yahweh. Thus said YHWH of Hosts, I have looked after that which Amalek did to Israel, that which he laid for him in the way in his going up out of Egypt. Now go, and you have struck Amalek and devoted all that he has, and you have no pity on him, and have put to death from man to woman, from infant to suckling, from ox to sheep, from camel to donkey. And Saul summons the people and inspects them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen, and 10,000 are men of Judah. And Saul comes to a city of Amalek and lays wait in a valley. And Saul says to the Kenite, Go, turn aside, go down from the midst of Amalek, lest I consume you with it. And you did kindness with all the sons of Israel in their going up out of Egypt. And the Kenite turns aside from the midst of Amalek. And Saul strikes Amalek from Havilah to your going to Shur, which is on the front of Egypt. And he catches Agag, king of Amalek, alive. And he has devoted all the people by the mouth of the sword. And Saul has pity, also the people, on Agag, and on the best of the flock and of the herd, and of the seconds, and on the lambs, and on all that is good, and have not been willing to devote them. And all the work despised and wasted, it they devoted. And the word of Yahweh is to Samuel, saying, I have regretted that I caused Saul to reign for king, for he has turned back from after me, and he has not performed my words. And it is displeasing to Samuel, and he cries to Yahweh all the night. And Samuel rises early to meet Saul in the morning, and it is declared to Samuel, saying, Saul has come to Carmel, and behold, he is setting up a monument to himself, and goes around and passes over, and goes down to Gilgal. And Samuel comes to Saul, and Saul says to him, Blessed are you of Yahweh, I have performed the word of Yahweh. And Samuel says, And what is the noise of this flock in my ears, and the noise of the herd which I am hearing? And Saul says, They have brought them from Amalek, because the people had pity on the best of the flock and of the herd, in order to sacrifice to your God Yahweh, and we have devoted the remnant. And Samuel says to Saul, Desist, and I declare to you that which Yahweh has spoken to me tonight. And he says to him, Speak. And Samuel says, Are you not, if you are little in your own eyes, head of the tribes of Israel? And Yahweh anoints you for king over Israel, and Yahweh sends you in the way and says, Go, and you have devoted the sinners, the Amalekite, and fought against them until they are consumed. And why have you not listened to the voice of Yahweh, and fly to the spoil, and do evil in the eyes of Yahweh? And Saul says to Samuel, Because I have listened to the voice of Yahweh, and I go in the way which Yahweh has sent me, and bring in Agag, king of Amalek, and I have devoted Amalek. And the people take of the spoil of the flock and the herd, the first part of the devoted thing, for sacrifice to your God Yahweh in Gilgal. And Samuel says, Has Yahweh had delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in listening to the voice of Yahweh? Behold, listening is better than sacrifice, to give attention than fat of rams. For rebellion is as a sin of divination, and stubbornness is as iniquity and teraphim. Because you have rejected the word of Yahweh, he also rejects you from being king. And Saul says to Samuel, I have sinned, for I passed over the command of Yahweh, and your words, and because I have feared the people, I also listened to their voice. And now, please bear with my sin, and return with me, and I bow myself to Yahweh. And Samuel says to Saul, I do not return with you, for you have rejected the word of Yahweh, and Yahweh rejects you from being king over Israel. And Samuel turns around to go, and he lays hold on the skirt of his upper robe, and it is torn. And Samuel says to him, Yahweh has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and given it to your neighbor, who is better than you. And also the preeminence of Israel does not lie nor relent, for he is not a man that he should relent. And he says, I have sinned. Now please, honor me before the elderly of my people and before Israel, and return with me, and I have bowed myself to your God Yahweh. And Samuel turns back after Saul, and Saul bows himself to Yahweh. And Samuel says, Bring Agag, king of Amalek, to me. And Agag comes to him daintily. And Agag says, Surely the bitterness of death has turned aside. And Samuel says, As your sword bereaved women, so is your mother bereaved above women. And Samuel hews Agag in pieces before Yahweh in Gilgal. And Samuel goes to Ramoth, and Saul has gone to his house, to Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel has not added to see Saul until the day of his death. For Samuel mourned for Saul, and Yahweh regretted that he had caused Saul to reign over Israel.